Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask Interview series. My name is Shane Mack, and I am so excited for who I have in the studio today. I have the CEO of the new sports media company called The Relish. Her name is Ashley Wellington. We've actually known each other for almost 10 years. Watching her from Seattle to now, raising her first funding round, building a company, we talk about everything from where she grew up, her obsession with sports, feminism in the world, and really how much diversity matters and how to believe in yourself. I hope you enjoy this. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
So good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. Tell me, where are you from?
I'm from the Seattle area, Edmonds, Washington. It's like...
North of Seattle, right?
Yeah, like 15 miles north. I always say it's like the Sausalito of San Francisco or of Seattle.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a clear vision of what it looks like.
Yeah, it's like a little ferry town on the water.
I actually think my brother has a sailboat in the Edmonds Marina.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I grew up going there.
Yeah?
Yeah. Every weekend, my dad's side of the family would like take the boat, my grandpa's boat, over to Kingston, and we'd like put crab pots in the water and then go out to the beach and go clam digging and make a whole weekend out of it.
Yeah, there's a Navy ship right at the end of the marina that sits there all the time. Is that right, Edmonds?
I think that's maybe Mukilteo, or maybe that's down south. I don't think that's Edmonds.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
No. Or maybe there is one now and I just haven't been back in a while.
And did you grow up boating your whole life?
Yeah.
Like with sailing?
No. My best friend Katie is a sailor and she calls motorboats stink pots. So I guess I'm a stink pot.
Why? What does that mean, a stink pot?
Like, I don't know. There are boats that have motors that stink up the ocean, I guess.
Oh, so she's saying sailing is the only way because we're polluting.
I guess.
Got it.
I've never really asked or for a deep dive on why it's called a stink pot. I just assume that's why.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in Seattle and you're a Mariners, Seahawks diehard fan?
Diehard. And
like,
formerly
what does
Sonics.
diehard mean to you as a sports fan?
I mean, that's a great question.
Like, did you paint your face?
I don't think I've ever actually painted my face. So for me, like as a kid, so I'll tell you the story about how I even became a sports fan. I think it's kind of a good story.
It's a great story.
So my parents are going through a divorce when I was like between the ages of like 8 and 10, and around 10 was when it became finalized. And at the
hold on, 2 years of like off and on. You're old enough to know what's going on, but you don't really.
Yeah, so they were like separated for 2 years, and then they got divorced when I was 10. And at this time, the Mariners, who were horrible forever, finally started getting good, and they had a shot at actually going to the playoffs. And it like brought the whole city of Seattle alive. It was 1995. And if anybody's listening to this that's a Seattle fan, they will be like probably getting chills. Actually, there's a Macklemore song called My Oh My that goes into the whole, we could listen to it if you want, that talks about this season. Anyways, digressing.
1995 Mariners.
Yes, the best year ever. So
this is like the Bulls, back when I was a Bulls fan.
Oh,
like the Jordan
yes, it was
same
like
time.
Exactly. Not great for the Sonics in that case, but anyway, so the Mariners, like the whole town's coming alive, and I'm just watching all of this energy of like people becoming obsessed with the Mariners, and we had these teal refuse to lose signs all over, and I was just like, everybody was obsessed with it, and I sort of jumped on the bandwagon. And there was this game in September. I think it was I want to say it was September 23rd. I think it was the 20th. I don't know. Maybe the date's wrong. But anyway, September 1995, the Mariners were playing the Angels to go on to the playoffs. It was like a wild card game. And my mom showed up to school one day while I was in the middle of class, and she pulls me out of school and she pulls out 2 tickets to this game. And she's like, we're going to the game. And like, you know, I'm like super distracted at this time. Like my parents are going through a divorce. It's a hard time, but I'm excited about the Mariners. So she pulls me out of school. We go down to the Kingdom, which is also no longer around. And I like, this is my first baseball game. So my first baseball game is like this amazing experience of like everybody around Seattle coming together to watch this game. sure enough, the Mariners win that day and they go on to the playoffs, and like the whole stadium erupted. Everybody like bum rushed the field. It was amazing. I remember my dad was actually at the game too. And I remember hearing that he had like eaten dirt off of second base. And I thought that was so awesome. So I became an obsessed fan from that day on. Like,
and is the stadium, is it the players? Is it the camaraderie of like the events? Like people are just, you're like, all of us together, this like roar.
I mean, I think at the time it was just the energy around that was going on around me, and watching people gravitate towards something collectively. But I also got really into just the game. Like, I thought the game was really fun and it was exciting. So I started.
I actually think baseball is so boring.
I mean, to be honest with you, like, the older I get, the less I have the attention span for. I blame social media for all of these things. But yeah, I mean,
all I spent time doing in my life was playing baseball. And now I'm just like, I can't stand baseball.
But you know what? Baseball is actually a really smart sport.
Yeah.
It's like the chess of sports. There's just, if you have to pay attention to everything going on around the field, like every single position is paying, like everybody has a role to play. And you have to know things about the players going in, like their stats, how they bat, how the person in right field, affect somebody who's up to bat. I mean, if you're paying attention, everybody's always moving around the field.
And like chess, this is interesting though. So like, because the chess
do not make me go down the chess path for too long, because I'm not very good at chess.
But just an interesting thing to think about, because in other sports, the same team plays every time, right? So in football or basketball, it's usually the same starting line, and they're just playing the other team. But in baseball, you're almost like picking who's going to be the king this game, and there are like hierarchies of roles. Like the pitcher is, way more important than some other role because they have every single time.
Yeah.
And so there is like a king and a queen, and then you have a bunch of like the front line of people that like just have to be there to pick up the ball if it comes to them.
Totally.
But and then you have the killer hitter. And
yeah.
Then, like the order.
You're
in which
right.
They go.
I mean, I was always using that analogy just from like the standpoint of there's a lot of thinking that has to go on inside of baseball, and it's not just like, oh, this guy's just like throwing the ball around. And but no, you're right. I never really thought to actually,
because there are individuals that have more power, right? Where in football, to complete a play, most of the time you need more than yourself,
right? And
you don't get to pick, like this pitcher, and now I'm going to do a left-handed batter because that's a left-handed pitcher, and or however that works or whatever. I don't know. I've never thought about it like that.
I know, but I mean, if you really want to get down into like how do you make it less boring, if you feel like it's boring, that's, in my opinion, how you can start to think about it differently.
Like a shot clock.
Yeah, kind of.
Shot clock for pitchers. Let's use some aluminum bats.
I mean, baseball, MLB is, they're in the position of having to try to think about like, how do you make the game a little bit more fast paced? Like, how do we keep up with attention spans? And especially as the younger generation comes in, they have a lot of work to do in keeping their attention on baseball.
Let's go into this a little more. I'm really interested about this.
Okay.
One is, there's so many games, right?
Yeah.
Baseball is like 140. How many is it? A lot.
It's 162.
162 games.
Yeah.
So it's half the year, right? And I actually was really interested in this as a brand. The MLB is so much harder as a brand than like the NFL.
In what way?
The NFL, I feel like people like fantasy helped us a lot. People love watching football. They don't just love watching their team. And I feel like with MLB, it's so regionalized that like you either love the Cubs, but I'd never go watch like the Dodgers just for fun.
Yeah.
But in football, maybe it's because there's way less games, or it's way easier to watch on TV because it's only like, a few plays actually a game.
Well, it's all about the entertainment
but the MLB
value.
feels like it's on a national level of like, I love baseball. Yeah. It's really, I love the Cubs. With the NFL, it's like, I love football and the Bears are my team.
That's true.
Is that true?
No, I think that's absolutely true. I think that's definitely true. I think there are teams inside of baseball, and you see this happen. Like, you look at playoffs every year and where are the ratings at? And there's been a lot of conversation about like, well, when it's been West Coast teams, like the East Coast doesn't pay attention as much. And I think there's a lot that goes into this kind of stuff, but part of it is just like the entertainment value. Like, they don't. That is so distracting.
I'm Instagram living right now
he's-
while you're talking. Keep going.
You're gonna have to edit this out.
No, we're not editing out. This is Ashley in the studio today.
Hi. I lost my train of thought. Anyways, like you've got the Yankees, you've got the Red Sox, you do have the Cubs, and these teams have huge followings, but they're marquee teams that have been in those markets since day one. Like one of the problems I think is when you move markets too often, that creates a disruption that's not really healthy for the brand of the team.
Yeah.
And then I also just think, again, back to like entertainment value, the NFL has done a really, really good job of making this about the entertainment aspect of the game. And I think the MLB has done that really well, and NBA is starting to do that really well too. And I think the NHL is starting to follow suit. But I think that's where the missed opportunity has been. But that also means that there's a lot of opportunity inside of there to create more of that. But to your point, like it is a lot of games. And now they're like, I mean, we're going to walk into the summer and we're going to have baseball, hockey. I mean, I guess all these things are happening all the same. It was like hockey, baseball, basketball, all this stuff. And then at some point that ends up happening again in the fall. It's like too much stuff to keep up with.
What happened to the Sonics?
Oh my God. This is still such a wound. Like it's not even fully healed.
I don't even know why. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Illinois. Is it Sean Kemp?
Well, yeah, Sean Kemp.
I was like a Sean Kemp fan, and I don't even know why. And he's a Sonics player, number 40, right?
Yes, I think he was 40.
It's weird. I don't even know.
It's been a long time, man.
What happened to them? They're in Seattle, and then no one likes basketball in Seattle?
No, everyone liked basketball in Seattle. That was
Well,
just a business issue. I mean, it was all business. And
explain it. You were talking about regionalized sports team and like teams changing markets, so it just made me think of like why the Sonics changed.
Yeah, and that one was interesting because Oklahoma City has wrapped the the Thunder, like they've brought them in with open arms. So that from a business standpoint, that wasn't a bad business move necessarily because the Oklahoma City market was absolutely like wanting them.
What was the business? What was the decision? Like, it's the smallest stadium in the NBA, right?
The Key Arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so was it build a new arena? We don't want the money.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, anytime you have a business owner in a position of wanting to turn more revenue, they will usually go towards the stadium, right? Like stadiums are considered a really great revenue driver, right? Like think about all of the opportunities that exist inside of a stadium, from the concessions to the suites to the tickets to like everything, all the retail components. So if you don't have, like these days, when we go back to the entertainment value of sports, if your stadium doesn't have a great experience inside of it, well, like when your team sucks, what else is going to draw people in, right? You have to have some sort of additional entertainment value. There's actually a lifespan of like when a new stadium opens. I think it's like 10 years before it starts to wean and people don't think about it as like a
unless
destination.
They're still winning.
Unless the team is doing really well. Which was kind of interesting because the Sonics actually had a lot of up and comers like Kevin Durant and all these guys were, and we saw that. We saw that with the Thunder, right? They ended up being totally kick ass. So, anyways, it was really just a business move. It was like Howard Schultz wanted, and the team
Howard
around
Schultz,
them.
CEO of Starbucks, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was like, talk about a lot of contention around the Seattle market.
Have you thought about how impactful are sports teams to local economies?
I mean,
is there like data around this? Do you know about this?
I don't have the data around it, but just from, I think that they can have a ton of impact if they're successful.
I mean, I watched it in San Francisco, right? I moved here 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I watched the Giants win 3 times.
Yep.
The Warriors.
Yep.
In the finals. I don't think the 49ers have been anything. Maybe like 5 years ago.
No, they were in the playoffs.
But the city is like electric. Like,
yeah,
it's fascinating for me to be here at this time, and
totally
like, everywhere, every bar's full, and I'm just wondering. Like, I was just curious, like, can you tell the livelihood and the like state of a city based on its sports?
Oh, you absolutely can. I mean, I don't have the data on how does it affect local business, but I think you could probably make an assumption that it affects it in a very positive way. Especially,
you should find that data.
No, I think you're right. Trust me, guys, my wheels are spinning as we're talking about this. But I mean, you can just look around what's happening, especially around stadiums and bars and that kind of thing. But like, I go to Seattle. I'll just keep going back to Seattle because it's in my heart.
Yeah.
You know, you go up there now, you see what's happened with the Seahawks. Like, you cannot walk 5 feet without seeing somebody wearing a 12th man something or a Seahawks something. Usually it's something to do with the 12. Like, my boyfriend Eric is not a sports fan. He's learning about sports through me in our relationship. But every time we go to Seattle, he's like, this is like creepy how much Seahawks stuff there is everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's like plastered everywhere. So, and that's a byproduct of the team doing really well. Like, people didn't do that before. People didn't wear
When
Seahawks
did it turn
gear
around?
all the time. It turned around when they won the Super Bowl. Or, you know, like, we're in a position to go to the Super Bowl.
And what was the catalyst to that? Like, what decisions led up to them winning the Super Bowl? Was it a new coach? Was it a new...
Oh, Pete Carroll was a huge instrumental part of that. Yeah. Pete Carroll came in. He brought a new way of thinking as a coach. He brought in, certain kind of players. He brought a lot of camaraderie into the team, I think. I mean, the kind of players that they brought on board were awesome. And they, everything I hear about Pete Carroll just as a coach is like, he's an amazing guy and people love to play for him. But he's also no bullshit. Like, he's the definition of a good leader. Like, he will take care of you and support you and love you, but if you aren't performing or you're not getting the job done or you're like a cancer to your team and you can't turn that around, then you're out. And I think that's what's helped them be such a successful team.
Awesome. So take me back. You were 10 years old. I fell in love with baseball.
Yes.
And then you're getting to be a 6th grader in grade school.
Yep.
And then you go to high school, whatever. What kind of student were you? What are you?
I was an inconsistent student.
What does that mean?
Like, I could be the smartest kid in the class when I was motivated to be, and I could, if I had too much going on in my life, I was incredibly distracted. Like, literally, there were years where I had the best grade in a class, and then there was another year where I was like at the bottom of the barrel. Like, it just depended. I had a lot of stuff going on when I was a kid, so I had like probably way too much on my plate as a young person, which was a little distracting at times. But I mean, that was.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I just family things. You
Yeah.
know, my mom had me when she was super young, so she was a single mother by the time I was in high school. So, my brother and I were doing a lot for ourselves and had a lot of responsibility. But I also I had a lot of responsibility from a very young age. Like, I was taking care of myself and my brother and helping my mom out a lot, like literally as soon as my parents divorced. So that.
Did you live with your mom or your dad?
I lived with my mom, and then I eventually moved in with my dad like later into high school. But I actually went to work pretty young. Like, I went to work.
What was your first job?
There's a hair salon in Seattle called Jean Juarez Salon and Spa. And my first job was literally to clean the salon. Like, I cleaning up people's hair off the floor and dispensing hair product. But I loved it because I got free hair stuff and free haircuts and free hair color. I had every hair color you could think of back then. So I think there's always been this thing instilled in me to kind of work hard and take care of yourself and support yourself and that. So I was going to school, playing sports, and I was working.
What sports did you play?
Volleyball and softball.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you still play?
I like playing volleyball. I don't play softball. I was horrible at softball.
Yeah.
I literally only played softball because I loved baseball so much, but I had no business. I was basically the cheerleader on the bench for everybody else because I wasn't good.
So then take me to where, you kind of get out of that. Did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Linfield College.
Nice. And you studied?
I studied elementary education, and I'll go backwards a little bit. So during this obsession of loving baseball and eventually football, I started telling people that I wanted to be the Katie Couric of the Mariners. I was also I love to write. That was it's always been very cathartic for me to write, ever since I was probably 12 or so. And I got really into journalism, and I would watch Katie Couric on the Today Show, and I just thought she was great. So I would tell people I want to be the Katie Couric of the Mariners, and they'd like think that was cute. And then they would just tell me.
How old were you?
I was probably like 11, 12, 13 in that range. And the message they would tell me was that's not a job that either exists or a job that there's a lot of opportunity. Like, it's all about who you know, or, it was never like, you should go do that. You should pursue that. Like, this is the path to doing that. Go to sports journalism school or something. Like, the message instead that I was being told was that was just too hard to get into. Huh. And I should find a job like.
Who was telling you this? Like, who were the people that? And this is how I grew up.
I feel bad calling them out.
No, I don't. I think it's not a problem. It's people actually, they're like trying to protect you, right?
No, they absolutely were. They were like, we want to make sure that she has like a job, but it was. I don't think they meant to be so gender stereotyping me so much, because the things that they were saying were like, well, you could go be a teacher or a nurse, and I was like, yeah, and it makes sense, right? Like,
maybe those were gender, but I think like the TV host, the musician. I mean, my dad was like, do not be a musician. That is not a career. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to go play weddings and make more money than I do making this stupid job. And it's like spite drove all decisions.
Oh, totally. So anyways, I ended up going to school to become a teacher. The reason I went to Linfield, because they had a great education program. While I was there, they had this elective course. It was like the first time they ever introduced it. It was called the History of Baseball, and it was like the coolest class ever. We learned about baseball, the economics of baseball, the business side, like, and our final project was to build a baseball team, an MLB team, in a market that doesn't have the MLB from the ground up. So
what's the key to the market?
You mean the key to like picking a market?
Yeah, is it like, what makes it? This is like the economics piece of like, is it size? Is it how many other teams exist?
Exactly. Like, so you were looking at things like, what's the market size just in terms of people there? You want to find comparable markets that already exist and find like replicable models. Got it. That you can sort of say like, okay, if this market is sort of mirrored to that market, that makes a lot of sense. What is the growth looking like for that market? So, I mean, we actually chose Las Vegas at the time. It was like 2007, I want to say. And at the time, this was before the recession hit, Vegas was like the booming market in the United States. So it was like the fastest growing market, and people were flooding to Vegas. And it looked like it was going to be like the future, like, I don't know, something, Portland or something. Maybe that's not a good example. Yeah. Anyway, so we were looking at that data. I called the mayor's office. I talked to the mayor. Like, we went like super deep on all of this information, and it's been 10 years now, so I don't remember all of it. But it just, there was a lot of things made sense. But one of the issues that exists when you like want to build a new team is stadium. Like, is it publicly funded? Is it privately funded? And that's been an issue for a long time, and we're watching this happen with
this is a huge thing. I mean,
it's a huge deal. I mean,
because cities are fronting the bills mostly, right?
Most of the time, yeah. And it's not like.
And the NFL has just been raking in the cash.
All of the leagues. I mean, this isn't just an NFL thing. This is NBA.
And how does it actually work? The real thing, it's that the city's taxpayer dollars fund the stadium, and then the
for
NFL
years
claims are like we're bringing a lot of economic value.
Yeah, and there could be truth to that, but again, there's a lot of like, the team needs to be good too, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to sell out a really nice fancy stadium for a little bit, but the other side of it is like, there was a period of time there weren't new stadiums popping up all the time, but now we're seeing this more and more, and it's like, the more technology continues to advance and things become super innovative, it's like a stadium that was cool a year ago it like has a lot of pressure to continue to stay super innovative. Like the Kings just opened up a new stadium this year.
It's supposed to be like the most innovative stadium.
Yeah, right? But then Dallas just had a bunch of change stuff, and like nobody really talks about that stadium except for maybe in Dallas. Like, it's hard to keep that momentum going these days, because every time a new stadium opens, like the next wave of big innovative stuff is happening. Whereas in like 1999, the Mariners opened Safeco, and like Safeco was super cool for a long time. And then the Giants opened their stadium, and it was super cool for a long time. But now like you go into those stadiums and they're still really beautiful, but the technology isn't quite as on par with like what the Kings are doing or Dallas or some of these other new stadiums. So anyways, back to that program. So that project. Anyways, we had to like build this stadium. It was awesome. I remember we were called, we had it funded by Steve Wynn. He was our financial backer for the stadium, and we called it Winfield, which I don't know if you guys caught it, but I went to Linfield. So it was like,
clever.
We were the Las Vegas Aces. Like, I don't know. It was awesome. We did not win. Indianapolis won. But I actually was just talking to that professor recently because Vegas just got an NHL team, and now there's all this talk about Oakland teams moving to Vegas. So I'm like, I haven't seen any teams go to Indianapolis, so maybe we should have got the...
Hockey in the middle of the desert is such a funny...
It is very weird. So after that class, I was like, shit, I really fucked up. Like, I should not have become a teacher.
One class was, you were like...
This one class, I regretted everything. I was like, what have I done? Like, I love kids.
What year were you?
It was my senior year. I was getting ready to graduate. It was like bad time to figure out.
So what did you do?
Well, this is where serendipity comes in. And I'm such a believer in like things sort of line up kind of the way they're supposed to if you're putting yourself on the right path. A friend of mine reached out and he was like, hey, he knew I was a diehard Mariners fan. He's like, I have a friend who is hiring for this entry-level coordinator position with the Mariners radio broadcast. He's like, here's the job description. Of course, I like typical, like now looking back, I'm like, oh, like if I could just be like, go back to my younger self and not think this way. But I was like looking at the job description. I'm like, I haven't had this experience and that. And it actually was my mom who was like, you need to look at these things listed on the job description and think about how the things you've done as a teacher, because I had done like, I taught like first graders as part of my exit out of my degree. She's like, think about how the things you've done as a teacher apply to this job. And when I did, like when, I thought of it from that perspective, I was like, okay, perfect. So I interview for the job. I don't get it. They're like, we think you're great, but we're going to take this girl who has a background, just got out of school for sports management. And I was like, oh, darn it. Oh, sorry. I'm not supposed to hit the table.
You're good.
Anyways, so I was disappointed, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go teach. I taught preschool for a year, but I did not give up on that like dream to go work for them. So I just stayed in touch with people. I like emailed them. I was like, I still would love an opportunity if one pops up. This girl that I interviewed with, she left, went to a different radio station. Long story short, I ended up meeting her boss at this new radio station. They had an entry-level position, not for like the Mariners or anything like that, but it was just this other radio station in the market. But the parent company of this radio station had a news talk station within the parent company, and the news talk station had the broadcast rights to the Seahawks. So I was like, okay, there's a sports like connection to this company. I'm just gonna get in, like do whatever work I have to do to like prove myself, and I'm gonna figure out a way to get a job in sports through the other station. So when I interviewed, like, maybe it was naive, but I was very honest. I was like, his name is Dave Pridemore. I like interviewed with Dave, and he's like, so what do you want to do with your career? And I was like, Dave, I want to work in sports. I was like, I interviewed for this job with Como. I didn't get it, but I really want to.
Como is the news station.
Como is the news station that had the broadcast rights to the Mariners originally. So I was like, I want this job. And he's like, okay, great. Like, that's awesome. So I get the job for this. It was an oldie station at the time. I can't remember how long I've been working there. I want to say like 2 months. And one day, that we have this big all hands meeting, and they tell us that the news talk station is Cairo is was going to be the new rights holder for the Mariners broadcast. So Como, the place that I didn't get a job at, they lost the rights to the Mariners broadcast, and Cairo ended up getting them. And I was like, oh my God. And then Dave was like, he's like, so we will be building a staff for the Mariners broadcast. If anybody's interested, please come and talk to me. Of course, I was like, I've been there like 2 months. Like I was still learning. But I went into his office. I was like, Dave, I told you that I wanted to work for sports and specifically the Mariners. Like, I want a job. I don't care. I don't care what I have to do. I'll learn whatever I have to do, but I really want to work for this team. And he was like, all right, let's talk, let's keep the conversation open. Anyways, I continued to pursue it, and he finally brings me in one day and he's like, listen, Ashley, I knew about us getting the rights when you were interviewing, and I've always kind of had you in mind for this job. So you will be coming on as our Mariners radio coordinator. And I was like, what? Like, what? That's so amazing. I mean, it was like the most surreal thing, right? Like, talk about.
Do you still talk to Dave?
Occasionally when I'm in Seattle, like I just reached out to him when I launched The Relish, and I was like,
there's so many amazing lessons in this though. Like, one, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
2, going in the back door.
Yep.
Like, actually planning, like, I'm going to end up with the Mariners however I get there.
Yeah.
And then.
But not in like a shade. Like, some people will take a back door like in a shady way. Yeah. And it wasn't that. It was just persistence. Like, I remember I was also nannying at the time.
And honesty.
Yeah.
Like, people undervalue. Like, people are afraid
honesty
to say.
Honesty is so important.
Radical honesty is actually like the key to sales. Yeah. But people think it's like selling things.
Yes.
And like, actually the way to win is to sell what you don't know. Or to be so honest with the things that, like, you call it like, I don't actually want to work here. I want to work there.
Yeah.
But that,
can you
like,
believe they gave me
that
a job?
connection. No, totally, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Right. Like, people go in selling AI and artificial intelligence, and we go in selling like everything we don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of studies on this now. Adam Grant wrote a book called The Originals. And a lot of it is about, if you're very radically honest, people then trust you. And then when they trust you, they're able to now believe what you say next.
Yeah.
And so there's a story of this person who went in and pitched a VC firm. And it's actually the way I've always done it. Like, I was with Robert at this meeting. He's like, this is what you do. And like, you walk in and you're like, I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong. And then what happens is 2 things. One is they do trust you.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is selling them smoke. And 2 is you end the meeting on a high, because you're not ending the meeting where they're digging into all the questions where that they're going to ask and you don't have the answers. Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I can be honest to a fault, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I know of some people who have done some investing, some fundraising, and I've learned about the dishonest things that they say to close the deal. And it's like, literally, I'm like, oh, this is pretty much fraud. Like, this is like, these people are investing in something that like, if you actually dug deeper or discovered a few things, like, it's complete bullshit. And like, when we've been raising The Relish, like, we have been really honest with people about where we're at, where we're headed, where we think our struggles will be, where we think we're going to be able to absolutely execute and do great shit. And like, I like am pitching this to people that I'm meeting for the first time or just establishing a relationship with. But like, I do think that honesty and that realness can be felt. And I mean, these are relationships that are going to carry with you for a long time. And if you ever want to raise money again, like, I would hope that you are thinking about these kinds of things, because like,
the world is so small.
Eventually, the world is small, and eventually those things all come back to you. Like,
totally.
That you can get yourself through one round by lying or making shit up or using people, but eventually those things all come back around to bite you in the ass.
Now we got it's your first time being a CEO.
Yeah.
And you're here, and you have The Relish. It's a sports media company for female fans.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
So, and you've just raised money from some of the best investors in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now don't lose it all.
We're not. We are. I call it. We go by the motto, we're classy but scrappy.
Love it. Like, take me back to the beginning. It's almost like, do you feel like you found your life's work?
Yes. I was getting so bored in my career. I was like, and we've talked about this. We've talked about this since like way before either of us ever moved to San Francisco. Like, because Shane and I have been friends since Seattle days. Like, we've known each other a long time.
2008.
Yeah. we were babies. But anyways, I've always kind of said, like, always been like, this sounds so trite and cliche, but like a idea person, right? Like I'm always like, what if this? And like literally at one point I wanted to open a dog park bar, and
genius.
I still would like
Whoever's
to.
listening right now, let me know.
I know you
guys.
guys
Will invest.
Seriously, let me know. I don't have any money to invest because I put it on the Relish, but I will support your bar.
You have the plans.
Henry and I will be there. Anyways, but like, you know, I could see an empty parking lot and be like, that's perfect. Like, you know, it's how my brain
beer
is.
gardens are genius, but they're like no infrastructure. People love to be outside, and dogs are awesome.
Totally. And heat lamps and like those string lights, and people are really
take
happy.
me get yourself to the Relish.
So I forgot what was the last thing.
You were saying you're always the idea person.
Oh yeah. So I'm like, I knew I wanted to start my own company at some point, but that's what I would say. I was like, I want to start my own company. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe it's a dog park bar. And then literally I was taking a shower one day, and
it's always in the shower.
I have a lot of good ideas in the shower. I remember Eric, I've mentioned Eric, my boyfriend, he had heard this idea that like, if you're looking for that thing, whatever that thing is, just write it, keep writing stuff down, like write ideas down, write out just a long list of stuff. And when you get to a point where something sparks emotion in you, whether it's like you're so giddy you can't stand it, or you cry or whatever, that's when you've got your idea. And that is what happened to me in the shower. Like this idea for the Relish popped into my head, which I actually, when looking back, like I actually had the idea 6 years prior, but wasn't thinking that I would do the company.
Yeah.
I actually presented it to Brian Sugar of Pop Sugar, interestingly enough. But I'm in the shower and I'm like, oh my God, this is the idea. Like, this is the thing. And I started crying and I was like, I think he's right. Like, I think he's onto something. So anyways, I just was like, not to sound so emo, but like when I thought about like how big and important something like this could be, and like what it could mean for a huge group of misrepresented people, that's when I kind of started to cry a little. I was like, oh man, like, and no one's doing this. Like, this needs to happen.
Break down that emotion. And you're saying misrepresent, like female fans that love sports, men and women's sports, doesn't matter.
Female fans who
have no voice,
who love, like, or are interested in knowing more about sports. Like, the problem right now in the market is that people look at a female fan, and the industry looks at a female fan, and they just try to put them into one bucket, the female fan bucket, right? But you can't. That's not representative of a female fan. A female fan has a lot more complexity than that. Like, I am different than another kind of female fan, right? So there's different layers to female fans, and so far the industry is mostly just gender stereotyped a female fan, or you know, there's like this pink it and shrink it marketing strategy, or just like we have all these masculine sites that just sort of have like an offshoot brand for a female fan, and it never really works. And what we're seeing in media with all of these like niche female women's lifestyle media companies kind of popping up. Look at what like Brit & Co has done, and Refinery 29, and The Skim is awesome. Like these amazing female-driven media companies who are doing awesome things, who are empowering women, who are giving women a platform to like use their voice and be allow themselves to be expressed in all the different ways women like to express themselves. But nobody was doing that for female fans. So that's the market opportunity we're grabbing a hold of.
That's amazing. And when you think about, and you females probably hold the spending power.
70 to 80% of sports betting comes from women, not men. That's
crazy. It's almost sad to me. Like I think about all of the ESPN shows, and when I see like the NFL, and it's like six huge guys talking about all those things, and when they throw a female in there, it's like just one.
It's one, and it's like the stereotypical like pretty girl, right? Which is nothing wrong with that, but like it's not representative. You know, they're like, oh, let's just check that bucket. It's not representative of the diverse amount of like women that exist inside of the female fan base. And that's something that's really important to us too. Like, you know, you're not just going to see the token white girl, right? Or the token pretty girl. We're going to show the full range of female fans and who we are and what we represent.
And if you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as like a new media company?
Yeah.
And in that vein, you have like the Cheddars doing online video on Twitter, or, it's crazy to me. Like when you said, I want to be the Katie Couric of the Mariners, like you can right now.
Yeah.
Like you're doing, like this is essentially it. Like
yeah.
new distribution platforms, new live video, new content mediums. Like there is no gate except you're willing to do it.
Yeah. But
people will be like, no, until you are the Katie Couric of the Mariners. And then you'll be like, now you're going to be the Katie Couric of the sports.
Yeah.
Well, do you feel like do you feel that is the mission behind you?
I don't think that I, at this point, am. So I'm
but
not.
You can enable that. You
I'm
can be
not
the person
interested in being the talent at this point. Like I'm interested in being the leader of the company that allows the woman who today is saying, I want to be the Katie Couric or whoever, right? Like
of every sports, you're the enabler to say, no, you can be the Katie Couric.
Yeah. I mean, we have women.
Get a mic and a great camera and
totally
be interesting.
You can't imagine the amount of women coming to us, like wanting an opportunity, because inside of the sports world, there's opportunities, but you have to conform to something else or, like I say oftentimes, one of the things we see happen a lot is women who want to get into the world of sports, they end up kind of having to emulate a man, which is just, and they have to work 10 times harder to like the ceiling for a woman in sports is like absurd. It's just absurd. I mean, and this is a big part of our mission at The Relish, is to give women who work in sports a voice as well, and an ability to be seen and to be heard and to have additional opportunities and to, break those ceilings, because there's I mean, we know this is a problem across many industries and verticals, but I
mean, it feels so relevant in today's climate.
It totally is.
It's almost motivating.
It's so motivating. Yeah. I mean, like,
I find just giving a shit about diversity into what's happening in the world today.
Yeah.
Just almost like I'm like very optimistically driven right now in a weird way of just like, fuck it. I have a little company that I can like try my hardest to care about what I think is right.
I mean, we're so lucky you and I are so privileged to be here, right? Like
for sure.
This is to be in San Francisco.
I mean, me way war. I'm a white dude.
And like a white woman is right in line, right? Like we're very lucky to be able to be in the position we are to do these kinds of things. And like, that is something neither one of us should ever take for granted, because
for sure.
I mean, but you also need people who have that kind of, like, if you have the privilege, do something positive with it, right? Like turn that into an opportunity to give other people who are marginalized or don't have the same privilege or same access an ability to acquire that.
Cool. Take me back a little bit. So you're just starting this.
Yeah.
First time through with the raising money, doing some venture, a female sitting down in VC, like all these things. And like, where is the company now? Like, what are you like thinking about day to day? What are you insecure about? What are you like, how are you feeling right now?
I mean, I feel so many things. I feel overwhelmed, but also you said the word motivated. I have never felt more motivated ever. There's a little bit of surrealness still, like when our first check hit the bank, and I saw it went from literally $0, because I was funneling everything for The Relish like out of my own bank account. So when the company bank account had money in it, I was like, what? Like, holy shit, there's money that we can get an office.
Fundraising's so weird. Like, I'm not really a person driven by money that much, and so I don't like I don't even really look at our bank. Like our CFO is like, here's where we're at, and we like think about it.
Oh, well, you can afford a CFO. Good for you.
No, she's a contract. But I remember like just hitting refresh on like wires are so weird.
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
I mean, it was like one.
And then once you get it, you're like, fuck, no, lose it. Like I don't want to. Like then like stress changes to a different stress.
I mean, I'm like the creep that's like looking at the bank account every day, and I'm Google searching what the little description is. If I can't tell what it is, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it was that thing that we had to buy. No, it's very surreal. It's totally surreal. I'm so grateful to have gotten this far. I think this round is one of the harder, if not the hardest, probably to raise this very early round, or at least that's what people tell me. It's definitely, I mean, this is a crazy climate to try to raise into anybody.
Explain, how was it? How long did it take?
It took, from the point we got really serious, it's been somewhere between like 9 and 10 months.
Wow.
And there was a pause in between. We kind of took a break and just focused on growing a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, it took a long time. And part of it too, like, it's media. Media is not something, like an investor hears the word media, and we hear more often than not, like, I don't do media. And then they hear the idea and they're like, well, tell me more about that. That's interesting. But part of the reason is it's like media can be, pretty high risk, and it's not typically $1 billion return, right? Like, we're not, the likelihood of us being the next Snapchat is not necessarily real. So I think people hear those words and they're like, I don't know, media. But then they hear like, oh, wait, they've unearthed a huge market that no one's really doing anything with. I mean, and that's when we get people to really listen.
If you think about it as like, one, new media platforms, 2, can you be the largest sports media company in the world, and 3, have the most engaged fans.
Right. I mean, engagement's huge. Yeah. These vanity metrics of like users and all that, I mean, certainly you want a high volume of users because there's a lot that can be done there. But if you're in the very beginning, if content is the thing you're attributing your monetization towards, which at least phase 1 for us is that, your audience means nothing if they're not engaged. And we're really lucky to have a highly, highly engaged audience, even while we're relatively small comparatively. And I think for me, that's the thing that makes me feel really confident about what we're doing. It's like, that's what we want to see. And that's part of our goal, is to empower more of that kind of engagement.
What does relatively small mean?
Meaning we don't have like ESPN numbers or Bleacher Report numbers, but we're
big enough.
We're growing. We have, share all the metrics to all of these people, but I mean, our investors absolutely know what our numbers are.
Cool.
And we'll have some press coming out about where we're at in the next quarter or so.
But ESPN, so take me there. They've been falling for years, right? They're on the down.
And
do you see yourself like almost as a channel? Like The Relish is like ESPN, and then you'll have all these TV shows who are more individuals than shows.
I mean, I just don't.
As like a true platform,
it depends.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, so yes, we have shows that we're working on right now. So video content is a huge play for us, and we're actively working on our original stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of where you distribute those shows to, and how you think about the distribution model and the future of where do we believe the consumer will be. One of the things that I think is awesome about being in San Francisco, and there's actually a few of us new media companies bubbling up around here, right? Like The Hustle, The Athletic, The Information, and we all think very similarly in terms of just how do you create new media for the future, not just for replicating what's already been done or what's happening today. And so when we're thinking about the future of The Relish, we're absolutely thinking about what is the long-term play, like where is the consumer headed, and how they want to consume media, and how we approach that.
Totally. I mean, I'm like so fascinated by this because people don't see it. Like the amount of money brands waste on TV is sickening.
Yeah.
And the last time this happened was radio to TV, right? And a bunch of radio hosts were like, TV's too hard, it's trying to be thing, and radio's much bigger, and like lost all their jobs.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's just attention, and everyone's here staring at their phone. And even when they're watching TV, they're not watching the TV, they're watching their phone.
Yeah.
And so it's like, then the podcasting is coming back. It's crazy. Like 10 years ago, podcasting was a thing, and then it kind of went away. And then the platforms now are so big that like, from podcasting, from video, from live video, from each social networks are the internet now.
Yeah.
And the internet's bigger than TV. So I don't know. I'm curious on what are your thoughts on, like, is it about a platform or is it about the content?
I think it's about both.
Yeah.
I don't think you can those aren't mutually exclusive to each other. Like, you have to be thinking about putting really quality content out there, and you have to be thinking about the platforms in which each of those things exist. And you can't think about them all the same. Like, what you do for a podcast, what you do for a video, what you do for Facebook versus Instagram versus your own site, if you've chosen to have a site, destination site, those things all have to be different. They all have to be specific to that different kind of platform. And if you're not thinking about that, then thinking about it in that way, then there's no way to win with the way people consume now.
Yeah. So you as a CEO, it's first time founding a company with venture, with money. How do you find inspiration and the confidence to go do this? Like, where did it come from? Like, is it go back to your past?
Yeah.
Who is the one who you go seek, or is it internal that be like, I can do this?
I think, truthfully, it's internal, but it was developed. Like, I had to develop this myself. I've always had like the drive to want to be successful and to want to own my own life and to have like, I've always been a dreamer. I would say a lot of things that like I've looked like, what are the qualities of someone who should be an entrepreneur? And I'm like, yeah, those things, I could check those boxes. But so it feels really cliche to say this stuff, but like,
Do you feel like divorce had a play in it?
The divorce of my parents. I mean, I think, yeah, actually I know it did, because at the time as a kid, I didn't like my life as a kid. Like, I didn't like my childhood. I wanted,
Why?
It just, there was so much struggle at such a young age. And I remember just thinking like, I can't wait. This is going to sound kind of sad, and don't worry, it's all worked out. So nobody should feel bad or anything, but like, I remember just thinking like, I want to grow up so I can own my own destiny in life. And like, I can be in charge of me and just, you know, where I take my life. And from whatever that was, right? Like, to the kind of job that I might have, or a vacation I might go on, or whatever that thing was. And I would just like, my mom would put us in the car a lot and we'd just drive around or go places. And I just stare out the window, listening to music, like daydreaming about what that future might look like. And I'm still that way. Like, I'm totally that way. I like make vision boards. I do all these things, right? Like I am a believer in like this idea of like, whatever it is you're dreaming, you spend time thinking about it, and then you do, right? You actively move towards that. So I think the confidence component, that was something that I developed myself. Like, I just eventually learned, like, the more belief you have in yourself and the more you actively work on that, the more that plays out. You know, I think insecurity and things of that nature are real for everybody. Yep. I think it manifests itself differently for every single person. I certainly have had parts of this process where I've had moments of insecurity or doubted myself or wondered, like, am I really the person who should be doing this? And then I take a minute to pause and reflect. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm the person to be doing this. Like, fuck that. Like, of course I can do this.
What is the emotion you feel when someone says, listen, you're not Katie Couric of the Mariners. That doesn't exist and you shouldn't go that path?
When I think about that now, it makes me mad. It makes me mad that that was the message I was being told. But I can look back and like understand where that thought process was coming from and that it wasn't like a bad intention. But I also think that's why things like the women's movements we're seeing today are so important, right? Like, we need to be making sure that those aren't the messages we're sending young girls and boys. And like, the messages we're sending kids at a young age on, you know, both genders and everything in between the two genders needs to be like, you know, words of encouragement and giving these kids sort of like an access point to like whatever it is that they're saying their dreams are, like, help them kind of see those, like, the path to that. That's another thing too. Like, I feel like college and all, I mean, college is so important, and education
Learning's
is
important.
Learning. Yeah.
College is perceived as the reason.
Yeah. No, like the educational component is so important, but we just go through this, like, we just check boxes. We don't actually show people the path to the things that they're good at or that inspire them or that matter to them. We don't even ask them. No. We really don't.
So it's fast. I'm teaching a class.
We tell, but we don't ask.
At Georgetown right now.
Oh, you are?
And
I didn't know
we've been
that.
doing it for like 4 years. And for first it was teaching entrepreneurship.
Huh.
And then after 3 years, 2 kids out of 450 started anything.
Are you serious?
Entrepreneurship is down across the board. No one's actually starting. So we were like, what? We're not serving anyone. Like we don't have a purpose here. And then I had this random idea about a year ago, and I was like, I wrote a book, and I remember when I wrote a book, everyone was like, "You're not an author. Why should you write a book?"
I remember your book.
Right?
That's cool.
And it's the same thing as like being Katie Couric of the Mariners.
Yeah.
People are like, "You're not an author." The same thing when I was in music, when I was in high school. People were like, "You're not a musician." And then 8 years later, you're playing a big show, and they're like, "I wish I was a musician." I'm like, "Remember when you said I was stupid?" And but it was I was looking at these kids and these seniors in college at Georgetown, top school. And I'm like, they don't want to be entrepreneurs right now. They want to be entrepreneurial minded. They want to work at companies that are entrepreneurial minded.
Oh.
And so we were like, but they all believe that they can't get the job they want. And I was like, what is the highest perceived signal in the world? And I was like, book is high. If you have enough time and resources and you can write an entire book, write 40,000 words, then like people are like, damn, like that's impressive, right? So I emailed the guy I teach the class with. He does it like, I fly out there, but he's like mostly the one who teaches it all. And I was like, we should make them all write books. And we should ask them what's their purpose and what's their dream. And we asked them who, since their life, they're a senior in college, they're getting done with school in 21 years, has ever asked you what your dream is. And none of them raised their hand.
Huh.
So we were like.
Well, but people probably ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Exactly.
But that's so different than what's like your dream. It's not.
And they didn't even think about it. And so I was like, and none of them have ever written more than 2,000 words ever, right? Term papers, whatever. It's just. And so last August, I was like, we should do this. And so I told Eric, he's like, this is crazy. We redo the syllabus in 3 days. And 32 students are in the class. Yeah. And he was going to quit teaching because he was like, well, I'm not even making a difference. Like, no one's becoming entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship program is like broken. And we decided to ask them what their purpose is and how we could help them demonstrate it. And so the one student was like, I just want to work at Under Armour. And he's like in sports marketing. And so we helped him.
Did he get a job? Because I'd love to talk to him.
A lot. So a lot of them actually are in sports. And what we did is we did this process where like, find your purpose, which is almost like finding your company. Yeah. And then interview all the best people in it. If you're going to feature them in a book, it teaches you how to do outreach and how to hustle to get people. Yeah. Like Kevin Rose's wife, who the Summer Tomato, Dara Rose, I believe. Oh. Like this lady from Georgetown, like reached out to her and she's like, yeah, I'd love to be in your book. And then they interview all the people and then they packaged them all up. And then I got a publisher to donate like $500,000 to publish them all.
Oh my gosh.
And last December, 32 out of 32 finished manuscripts.
That's awesome.
Over 20,000 words each.
Wow.
And no one believed they could write it. Yeah. No one believed they could do it. And it's this problem. Now I'm on like a rant, but it's like, my point is that like the purpose thing, no one ever does. Right. And then all of a sudden, the student gets a job at Under Armour because he wrote the book on how augmented reality is going to change sports.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And it's like,
and he's right.
Yeah, like if I have glasses on that I can see fake defenders and how I shoot, and it's like I can get better and train or whatever. Like, yeah, he's gonna get a job. Then the other lady, Marin, just wrote a book called the.
What's her last name?
Cannon.
Oh, okay.
The Glass Sky, and it's how women can break through the outdoor industry.
That's awesome.
And all these things and now I'm seeing their book covers come through. And I'm like, holy shit. Wow. And what we're realizing is that it's not about the book. What we did is Signal in the past is something that was created in like 1972-3 by like Michael Spence, signaling theory. It's why people will get careers. And it was all based on you borrow signal. So you borrow signal from institutions and companies. That's why you go to Stanford. You get a job because of Stanford, not because of what you learned at Stanford, right? You get another job because you worked at McKinsey because it has high signal. Right. That gets you your next job. And what we realized is that you spend your life borrowing signal. But that signal you borrowed can go down. If you worked at Enron before Enron crashed, you got signal and then it died. Yeah. So we're like, signal now is about how do you create for yourself and give yourself purpose, and then how do you demonstrate that signal? And all of a sudden we started analyzing these students from their signal score based on purpose and demonstration before the book and after the book.
Wow.
And all of the students went up.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And so it gave them the sense of like, Marin's like, I can't believe in under 6 months, I feel like my life's changed and I know I'm going to go get a whole new career.
Yeah.
And this is like, now we're doing it again this semester. And it's like, it's crazy.
We need to replicate this, A, at younger ages, and B, at places where kids don't have that kind of access.
Exactly. That's
we
our
need to
next
create
step.
signal
like,
for people.
For everyone, right? And it's really just about believing in yourself.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
But watching everyone, no one believed that they would write books. And now that they've all written, I literally every day I get a new book cover. Yeah. And I'm just like, holy shit, that's amazing.
That's so awesome.
But
that's
for
so
you
cool.
to create 100 Katie Courics, like that's your opportunity.
I mean, so yeah, that's part
Sorry,
of it.
that was a long-winded
There's some
story. But
don't worry, we've got some strategies in place. But when you said
amazing.
that, I was like, that's a part of the plan.
But I think it's like why helping people find what you found in the shower and then the confidence to believe that they're the one to do it.
Yeah.
Is a really fascinating. And it wasn't about be like a self-promoting person and be an entrepreneur. Half of them were like, I just want like a one job here with this company because I love that industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Like 7 years ago, people were like personal branding.
Yeah.
The problem with personal branding is it's about the personal branding. It's that for that sake. And it's just bullshit.
I know some CEOs who literally that is all they do. They just work on their, I'm like, when are you going to talk about your company? Like,
exactly.
And I'm like, well, personal brand matters to a point. Like if you don't, like you should be paying attention to what you're putting out there to a degree, but like what the brand I'm building is The Relish. Like my personal brand is whatever it is, but like, that's not the thing I'm focused on. Like The Relish is the thing that matters the most.
But like the reason personal branding is complete horseshit is because it's for people do it for the personal brand.
Right.
But there's no depth.
Exactly.
So what we really found is that you have to go deep.
Yeah.
And the deeper you go, to be able to write a book, you have to go deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the catalyst of the book is fascinating, but there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I think, I don't know, no one ever like just sat these kids down and asked them what they dreamed of doing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then now they're all like completely changed their entire outlook on what they're going to do in their life. And to be really like the parents now believe more than they do because they didn't believe they would ever write a book.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a crazy story.
That's
Anyways,
amazing.
long story.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Back
I think
to
that's
your interview,
great.
it's just like,
but let's replicate that for kids. Like I'm such a believer that there's so many things that could be fixed or made better or just changed if we started doing this stuff earlier.
Yeah. Why do people tell people no when it's about a career of something they don't understand? I think it's this like my father was like, don't be a musician. You know, he's like, you got to go.
It is protect.
This is the job.
Because they don't want to see you fail.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to, and they don't want to see, like they can see all the stumbling blocks and walls and potential barriers to entry. And they like, it's a parent's natural instinct to protect, right? And so like their intention is probably not to be like, you can't do that or make you feel bad, but like ultimately that's really damaging. Like it because the things that the people that love you most are telling you are like the thing you listen to, right? Like parents have so much power. And
what do your friends and family say to you now?
Oh, they're so proud, which is like awesome. I mean, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm making it sound like my family has never been supportive.
No.
They've been overwhelmingly supportive of me my whole life. There's, except for this like one person that said this thing that stuck with me, right? Because it was the thing that mattered to me most at the time. There was another thing I also taught myself HTML code when I was like 12, and I so regret
that's amazing
not doing anything with that. Like it was like not anyone's fault or anything, but I wish that somebody had been like, Ashley, this can be really valuable for you someday. And I never ended up actually doing anything with that later, but I wish that I had stuck with that too. Like, imagine if I could have been like an engineer and a Katie Couric of the Mariners, like combined into one. I could really do some crazy stuff.
Or you would have not played to your strengths and be where you're at. You never know.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. I'm happy with the way things are turning out now. So I think that I was lucky to have you know, some resources in place to kind of help guide me in the right direction for sure.
So what's your dream for this?
My dream is that I hope that we get to a place where we don't have to call this for female fans.
Yeah.
Where a female fan is just considered equal to any other male fan, which is just not the way that it is right now. My dream is that when somebody says female fan, they think The Relish, and vice versa. They know that this is a brand that is for this hugely underserved market, but eventually we're the brand that has allowed there to be an equal playing field.
Feels like it's
no pun intended.
It feels like it's much bigger than sports.
It is. This is about a movement. This is not just about creating, you know, a media company.
Yeah.
Like a media company is what we are today. This is the future of what we're trying to build is so much more than that.
Did you participate in all the women's marches and stuff?
Well, I participated in the San Francisco march. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's not called
hard,
women's march.
It's hard to be in all of the marches at one time.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, I was at the San Francisco one.
And what do you feel in the movement happening right now?
I mean, I think there's a lot. It's a very.
Because you're kind of tied it in a way, like it all underlies like your mission, right?
Yeah, I mean, the timing for this is interesting, right? It's kind of perfect, honestly. Like the fact that we're kind of having this. There's this term called fourth wave of feminism, like this next wave of what feminism looks like, and I think that the timing to be talking about something that is for women is really important. But yeah, I mean the women's march, it matters. It's so important. Like there's power in solidarity. There's power in a lot of people coming together to rally around an idea. It's also forcing us to like think about all the other parts of this, right? Like there's some controversy that exists inside of the marches and inside of like, you know, like there was a lot of talk about how taking the day off yesterday for International Women's Day is actually kind of a privilege if you can do that and know that you're going to come to a job the next day, right? So like there's a lot of layers to all of this, and you know, it's something that you just have to be really mindful of all the different components to what this is.
What were the first three pillars of feminism? Like if it's the fourth wave. Oh, you don't know?
No.
That's just what they're calling it. They're like, fourth wave.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you see the movie Hidden Figures?
I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh.
You want to know why I haven't seen it?
Why?
I have this really bad problem. This is a very weird flaw. When I buy tickets on like Fandango or we go to Alamo Drafthouse a lot, for some reason when I buy tickets online, I always buy them for the wrong day. I don't know what it is about me. I've done this 4 or 5 times. Like Star Wars.
Investors. She doesn't do this with money. I promise.
No, I don't. It's Eric said, he's like, this is this like one weird flaw that I found.
So you bought tickets to Hidden Figures, and then you were the wrong day.
Oh yeah, Hidden Figures, Star Wars, a couple others. Like yeah, so I got it for the wrong day. This was at Kabuki, and I was like, listen, here's what I did. They're like, well, we can get you tickets to this other movie. So that's why I didn't see Hidden Figures.
Because it was sold out?
I think the timing was just completely wrong. It was Kabuki, and I think that day it was on a different time. I can't remember. Or it already started or something.
You need to go see it.
I've heard it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Been a little busy.
It's about, for sure. You got to find inspiration.
Yeah.
It's, it's just about the 3 women who helped really get the whole space program to the moon.
I know what it's about, but
it's cool.
I've heard it's incredible. I love that stuff. I love like anything that just makes you feel good about what, makes you feel good about what's been done before us and inspires you to sort of kind of leave a legacy like that. And I love that.
So I think the tech industry in general, a lot of things around diversity, around, sexual harassment lately, a lot of the stuff at Uber, there's a lot of things happening all over the place. As a female CEO, to help us non-female CEOs, like what are your recommendations? How do we be better? How do we care more? How do we make it happen without always having to address that it's happening, right? Like a lot of friends of mine who are really, they like feminist leaders are like, don't acknowledge it as like a woman in general. It's just like, it's just a leader. You know? And so how can what would you say to help us all?
I think, I mean, it's a good question because there isn't just one simple answer to it. It's got a lot of complexity. But I think some ways to start is, one of the things that I see happen a lot is like, oh, we just need to check that box, or we need to hit a metric. And everyone gets really excited about their metrics, and like those things do matter, right? Like you do want to see those numbers increase, and like being able to show that that increase is happening is how you prove that there's change. But I think it has to go further back than that. Like we have to really be looking at things like unconscious bias and like privilege, and what does privilege mean, and like
what is unconscious bias? And I mean, I know what it is, but like explain it in this scenario.
Like you make a decision. Like there's an example of, I'll give the example of like the resume. When you see a name on a resume, there's an automatic moment of bias that happens just from the kind of name that you see there. I think there's been a study even about like, I can't remember all the details of the study, but you can see a man's name and up against like a woman's name, or somebody that maybe is of a different culture, and there's an automatic bias there. Like there's this percentage of resumes that end up being chosen if it's the man's name, right? Like it's like,
Did you see this today? So look at the screen. This is on Twitter. This guy and this female. So Martin and Nikki, for 2 weeks, they switched names. I signed all client emails as Nicole, and she signed as me.
Oh my gosh.
And it says, folks, it fucking sucked.
That's awesome.
And so
did he say why it sucked?
So it's Schneider Remarks on Twitter. I mean, he has an entire thread of like, here's the fucked up thing. For me, this was shocking. For her, she was used to it. She just figured it was part of her job.
Wow.
It's
Everyone
crazy.
should see this.
Nicole had the most productive week of her career. I realized the reason she took longer is because she had to convince clients to respect her. Mm-hmm. That's insane. That happens. That's real. Every day.
That's super real. Oh, every day, all day, like multiple times a day, this stuff, it happens.
Do I do it and not know it?
Probably.
Yeah?
I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to be like so self-aware of it. Like, but then I'm like, I don't want anyone to feel bad because it's like I have to try. And so it's like, then I feel like because I'm trying, it's like, well, just stop trying. You should already do this. I'm like, fuck, I have this like insecure battle with myself.
Have you seen the SNL skit of male feminists going awry?
No.
It's good. There's probably
when is it? What is it? SNL?
It's an SNL skit about like, I think it's called like Wild Feminists or something. It's about male feminists who kind of use their feminism basically to take advantage of women. And this is a huge problem too. Like now we're
Explain that. Go.
So this idea of like men who are like, yeah, I'm pro woman, and then they use that just to kind of get in with women or like get a date or get laid or whatever the thing is. And then when a woman is like, no, thank you, he's like, bitch, like this is in the skit, like, and then it's this whole idea that like, oh, a man is a feminist until it doesn't serve him in some other way. Like if it doesn't, I guess it's this whole idea like, if the man doesn't benefit from it personally, then he's not actually interested in being a feminist. It was just a great article. So like that's the other thing. It's like we see a lot of this too, like men wanting to attach themselves to feminism because it makes them look better, or it's better for their brand, or it's better for them, in the dating scene or whatever. This is another like problem that's now in front of us,
that's hard. I mean, so on our side and on the guy's side, it's like, how do I not be perceived as taking advantage of it? Because I mean, I made a stance with our company. I said, I want to be 50-50 by 50, which is 50% diverse on all levels by 50 people. And
just do it. Just do
that's what we're doing. I mean, like, they're doing it.
Don't talk about it. Just do it.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
And then it's great. Like, you're only doing that now because you know it attracts people. And I'm like, someone actually said that to me, and I'm like, no, I'm doing it because one, I believe diversity of thought is important.
Why do you think you weren't doing it before though? Why do you think now you're doing it?
I didn't even see the problem. Like I didn't think it was.
Why do you think you didn't see the problem?
I mean, well, if I think of Zarly, right? Mm-hmm. I think it was about half and half. There were it was like a lot of women actually. It was very much, but all the founders were white men.
Yeah.
Right. And so I actually just think I didn't slow down to even make myself care about it. And I was just like, ideas and tech and blah, blah, blah. I was like, it wasn't my company, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, so I wasn't like, I get to choose. And
do you think maybe maybe you just said this, but like, you just weren't aware, like,
yeah,
until somebody,
Catherine Spence and Sasha Rothschild. They're two of my really good friends, and they are really, really like mentors to me. They came to the Ask Dinner, major feminist movement, and always telling me, Catherine, on her birthday, I messaged her and I said, happy birthday. And she goes, hire women. That's all she said to me. I swear to God. And we just, Laura actually joined on Monday. We have another person joining next month. And like, yeah, like we're just doing it. But I'm doing it because I think it's a good thing to do for everything. I think having women in leadership and different, like, I don't want everyone to think like me.
Yeah.
Like actually, and there's a bigger thing here, which is that if AI becomes real, how AI thinks is actually more important than anything.
Yeah.
There's a huge study on this where I was actually just reading it. It was fascinating where machine learning engineers analyzed all of the army, people in the army. Mm-hmm. And then they started doing like, what does a person look like? So what does a general look like? What does a criminal look like?
Interesting.
And when you search generals, it brings back all white men. And when you search criminals, it brings back all black men. And because it was trained by all white dudes.
Oh man.
And so when you get into like
even our
AI,
bots have all this crap that we have to deal with now. Like man.
How things learn is actually another reason why diversity of thought, when we're programming the training. I mean, it's like any training in life.
Yeah.
Right? If you're training another human, you start thinking like the person that taught you.
Yeah.
Social influence is real.
No, it's absolutely true.
That's a whole different like reason where it's actually more important than ever.
Well, and we're talking about this just from like being here in America. Like, I wonder if that would change. Eric and I were just talking about this at dinner last night. Like, what if, what would that be? What would a bot be like in another country where there's a totally different thought there or bias or whatever the things are. Like it changes culturally too, which is really interesting when you think about bots, because if bots are like, we think of them in this sort of like linear way, but really, like, if AI does the thing that you're hoping that it will do, and a lot of us hope will be the future, it'll be interesting to see how that evolution of bot exists, similar to evolution of humans and the way we think. And right. I don't know, it's just so fascinating.
Will there be
I could go down this rabbit hole for a long time.
Will there be a religion for bots?
I mean, there's so much money in religion, probably. I'm sure.
Certain bots talk to other bots because they've learned on what they think matters to make the world better.
Yeah.
I mean, the world of robots and humans is going to be really interesting.
It's going to be so interesting.
Are you a robots kill everyone type person? Or are you like the humans and robots figure out how to work together?
I think we figure out how to work together. I think that I could imagine a world when we're like humans kind of just become sort of valueless and bots have all the value. But
did you see Bill Gates' proposal?
Kind of sounds relaxing, honestly. Just hang out on a
That's
beach.
an interesting concept people are talking about now is you get into, if bots do take all the work, then is it a better world actually? If you have the optimist
I don't know.
view.
Here's the thing though. Like people need, like most people need purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing that I think is dangerous. When people don't have purpose, that creates an interesting problem.
But if you look at it from America and developed countries, the sense that work is purpose is very new.
Yeah.
Less than hundreds of years.
But that's going to take so much evolution. So I feel like there's going to be a really corrupt time when there's bots and humans and like, weird. We're like, wow, we're going to just
But if you think about what defines purpose, it's changed
something.
forever.
Yeah.
Like purpose that is your career, very new. Purpose of survival and helping everyone in your community like eat.
Yeah.
That was not that long ago.
No, it's true. That's so true.
And so then it's like, what redefines what purpose means?
Yeah.
Is it you get to be creative? And actually the musicians and the artists are the ones who parents are like,
who are on top.
Grow up and be a great
I hope so.
Play guitar,
That'd
right?
be such a better world. Oh man.
But now it's like the risky thing. But in the future, if the job that can be replaced if you don't use your creative mind is true, then it's like, don't do that. Dad's like, don't go into labor. Don't go into the labor marketplace and Caterpillar lines. And he's like, there's no jobs there.
Yeah.
Like, what happens? I don't know. It's going to be really fast.
It's going to be really, really interesting. We nerd out on this all the time at home. Talk about this a lot.
I want to wrap up here, and I want you're inspiring, and I think a lot of, especially like younger females, could benefit from your words of like, if you had to tell, people say this all the time, but like yourself 10 years ago, something that wasn't, you're not going to be the Katie Couric of sports, what would you tell yourself?
Bullshit. Like, or actually, I mean, I probably wouldn't say bullshit because it's not bullshit, but
No. What would you tell yourself if it was you now? Not that person.
What would
you tell?
What would I tell my 10-year-old self?
Yeah. Or anyone listening who is, wants to be that or doesn't really know how, or, how do you give them the confidence that you have to be able to go out and do this?
The advice that I would give someone is whatever it is you're thinking about, if you keep thinking about it, if that thought never goes away, then just keep pursuing it. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask for a sit down with somebody. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask somebody how they ended up where they are. I think that the biggest thing for me was not that I was obsessed with this idea of becoming the Katie Couric of the Mariners forever. Like, that didn't stick with me forever. It just evolved into something else. But there was an innate thing there that always existed. And the thing that gave me the confidence to kind of go and pursue whatever this version of it, the relish, and even just working in sports early on, was my willingness to sort of open my own doors and talk to people and meet people. And we talk about it, and again, it's cliche, but like, you really have to believe in yourself. Like, even if nobody else does, you have to do that. Like, the one person you can control is you. So do that.
You know why it matters more than anything? It's because in 3 years, you're going to see someone you went to high school with, and you're spending every day of your life on the relish, and you think that the world knows about it. And then they're going to go, what have you been up to? And you'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what happens. And it's like, if you don't believe in yourself, like no one else is going to do it for you.
Oh, no, not at all. It's interesting. I have a 7-year-old sister and a 16-year-old sister, and
that's amazing.
It's really, they're half siblings, but they are very close to me, just like any other sibling would be. And it's really neat to see them, like to see the amount of confidence that they have and the strength that they have. Like, Brienne is 7. Sorry, I know we're wrapping, but
that's great.
Brienne's 7.
I think this is so important. Like, giving anyone confidence. I was like, what do these students coming out of Stanford have that other people don't? They have delusional confidence because their teachers are people that have really built.
Well, they have a lot of other things too, but yes,
a lot of privilege.
That too, yeah.
But that comes with confidence. But they have this confidence that is like, holy shit, I didn't have any of that. My college was like the Better Business Bureau of Macomb was my teacher, and she's like, life's kind of shitty. It's a good college, but it's just a different optimism and confidence, and so I think it's so important to how do we give kids more confidence?
One of the things
back to your sister.
I would tell my little sisters from very early ages was, believe in yourself. Don't be kind to people, be honest with people, believe in yourself, whatever it is that you care about, follow that, but don't compromise who you are, and don't compromise yourself when it could be very easy to compromise yourself. And there'd be examples of that, right? And even just I see all the time these examples of both girls doing that in their life at a young age. Like Brienne,
7 and 14.
She's 7 and 16. Brienne, 16. I was just home this weekend. She has been bullied at school. We just found out. This kid threatened to kill her and was just a horrible little kid. And I was talking to her about it, and I'm like, Brienne, how long is this going on? She's talking about that. I'm like, why do you think he's doing this? And I was like, is he doing it to other people? she was like, yeah, he does it to everybody, but he does it the worst to me. And I was like, why? And she's like, because I'm the only one that stands up for myself. And I'm the only one that stands up for anybody else around me. I was like, how does that make you feel? And she's like, well, it doesn't make me feel good when he does that. But she's like, I'm not going to stop standing up for myself. Wow. And I mean, I was just like, she's 7, you know? And then the next day, she had like, we had just watched that Disney movie Sing. And she's like a little bit of a performer. Like she always kind of has been since she was even younger. Yeah. And I came upstairs to her bedroom and she was sitting at her desk and she was writing something down and she kind of hid it. And then we went to bed, and the next morning I was sitting down at her desk and she had written this letter to herself that was like, believe in your dreams. You've always wanted to be on stage. Go for it. Like, and she's very smart and she has like great grammar, like for a little 7-year-old, but like, I have a picture of it, right? Like she wrote this letter to herself. And I was like, this is such a valuable life skill that she's just like doing for herself that will carry with her forever. Like those little things, those little tools are so useful. And you know, having these little sisters, I think I try to instill a little bit of those things that I've learned along the way into them earlier on so that they can have those pieces in their toolkit.
What does your 16-year-old sister say that she wants to be?
I asked her about it. She kind of shifts around. Like she's talked about being a lawyer before. I feel
talk her out of it.
Yeah. Well, no,
I'm kidding. We need lawyers. Lawyers
yeah.
save the day.
She doesn't know. She's not sure, but she has for example, like she makes choices already for herself that are good for her. Like she was playing volleyball. She's been in like select volleyball and doing all these sports, and she had a bad experience with it. Like the coaches, she stood up for herself with her coaches, and then her coaches didn't like that, and so they stopped playing her. And she was like, well, this sucks. So she was like, you know what? I'm not going to put up with that. Like, I'm going to go do a different sport. So she's like trying out for cheerleading now. And I'm like, good for you. She never talked badly about people. She never, you know, she didn't quit the team during the season. She waited till the end of the season was over. Like, you know, she just carries herself with a certain level of integrity and, but also confidence. And she didn't let the fact that like, I'm sticking up for myself and then that backfired on me just disrupt her ability to continue to move forward. And Brian, I'm seeing the same thing. And I mean, like, to be honest, I guess those are skills that I've discovered are really valuable. Like, God, when life knocks you down, it can knock you down super hard, and you just have to kind of like get up and keep going, and you find out you're even stronger than the last time.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Thank you for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
From someone who's been, you know, a friend for a long time, I'm really proud, excited, and you know, I think you'll do great.
Thank you. Well, likewise, it's been so inspiring to watch you, and you've taught me a lot and been just a great person to be able to lean on when I've needed to. So thanks for being you.
No, thank you.
All right.